Welcome back. Today we are going to work on our first Gregtech machine that actually does something, a primitive water pump. This multi-block contains a lot of treated wood, which is made with creosote oil, and, as usual, the buckets you must make before having access to iron have no uses other than making iron. So we throw them away. And we make a bunch of good, old, iron buckets. Next we can make all the parts for our primitive water pump, which, for the moment, we place in a chest. The second thing we want to have before using that pump is a tank, which we swiftly craft. The only thing we need now is a place where we can build these new machines. And there we have it. Now we have to follow the instruction to make a working multi-block. Once assembled, we can see that our new pump is producing 250 liters of water per second, which will come out in that pipe to fill our new tank. Now that we have a stable source of water, we are ready to start our steam-fueled industry and thus to start a revolution. To do so, we are going to make a small solid boiler, which we shall place close to the water tank. We are fueling it with coal to produce steam which we can't store inside a wooden tank. So we shall make a bronze drum be enough as a buffer. However, we can already see that this boiler won't make it, so we upgrade it to a high-pressure one which makes more than double the amount of steam. Now we have to make something for using that steam. To make any useful machine, we first need some parts, such as steam pistons. Now we can have our first steam machine, a macerator. This will do all the tasks that required a mortar and will also double the ores while crushing them. As every other steam machine, it has an exhaust vent which must be able to vent into an air block the steam once the machine finishes processing. To have less manual work, we are going to craft a couple of hoppers to feed and empty the machine automatically. And here we have our maceration setup which will help us make dusts without crafting too many mortars. However, there is one way more efficient way of making bronze, an alloy smelter. Since this machine is probably going to use up a lot more steam than the macerator, we shall have it closer to the steam tank. And thus we have our second steam machine. Other than making bronze in a faster and cheaper way, the steam alloy smelter is also required for obtaining glass. The reason why we need glass is for making solar boilers. These don't produce much steam, but it is free passive infinite steam, so they are a great help. And the high pressure version is a really solid energy option in the early game. Indeed, once heated up, they will produce even too much steam. The next machine shall be a steam compressor, which will allow us to make iron blocks. And, if the machine stops working, we must remember to make sure it can vent out the exhaust. Anyways, we needed the compressor for making the iron blocks for an anvil so that we can finally have a forge hammer. This machine will make us not have to craft hammers continuously while also giving a better ingot to plate ratio. Now our steam workshop is starting to take shape, however, we have no steam buffer which makes us waste some steam in some moments and stop working in others. Thus we made a steel tank which can hold steam. Now we have to do a little bit more of piping to connect the solar generators, and the tank will start filling up. Finally, we connect the old machines using built-in pipes that have twice the throughput of bronze pipes. And after a little bit more of tidying, here we have our new workshop. The next issue is that our steam macerator can't keep up with all of the ores, so we take it out to upgrade it into a steam grinder which works faster while also doing parallel. However, now we have too many half-processed stuff, and even a wall of furnaces can't keep up anymore. Thus we shall have a steam oven which will work faster, in parallel and won't burn fuel. And we shall also upgrade our other machines to high pressure. Now that we have a workshop with all the basic stuff, we can start moving on to the more specific and advanced machinery. The first one we are going to make is a latex collector. That machine has to be placed right next to a rubber tree and it will collect latex. It requires steam as power source and some water for starting the process, but it won't use up the water. We can take out the produced latex using a drum, and we move it to a vulcanizing press that can process it into something useful, rubber. However, to do that, we also need a bunch more of dusts. For making these, our next machine shall be a roaster. By throwing some pyrite inside it, we quickly get access to sulfur. However, we also do need a catalyst agent. The first one I could find the ores for is magnesia, which comes from an ore called magnesite which spawns in the underneath, and it was under a cave, and we take damage when in the dark in the underneath dimension. Luckily, we managed to get a bunch of it. Once refined in a purified dust, we can roast that to obtain magnesia. And thus we have the catalyst. Finally, by adding a steel shape, we can obtain the so wanted rubber. The only issue with this setup is that we have to manually move the latex. To avoid having to do that, we can use a pump. This is a cover which can be applied to machines and pipes, and we can remove it with a crowbar. Anyways, now that we have lots of rubber, we can make cables and machine hulls. But, before we can use these, we also have to work on circuits and motors. We are going to start from the simplest thing, motors. The only problematic part is the magnetic rod for the rotor. We should probably make it using a voltaic pile, however, that looks like a lot of annoying work. So we are instead opting for the lazy option, magnetite. We already have the mineral, we only need a bunch of rocks. So we are going on a field trip for a whole day to collect one whole stack that hopefully will last us for the whole LV era. All we have to do now is to heat up a bunch of iron rods and magnetize them. And it appears that we could have stopped after the first rock, since we can use a magnetic rod for magnetizing all the rods we want. Anyways, now that we have the rotor, we can craft the motors. It is now time to work on the typically annoying part, circuits. As in every other GregTech pack, the first step into making circuits is redstone alloy. So, we quickly work in the usual way some redstone even tough. In this pack, we could have simply cooked the raw mineral to get pure dusts. And we alloy with copper to obtain the metal for circuitry. Which, as usual, we have to turn in wires with the bad crafting table ration way. Now we can make the components that go inside a vacuum tube. Next, we make a bunch more of glass dust and mold it into a ball, so that we also have the tubes. Now that we have the components and the tube, we only lack the vacuum. To make it, we are going to have one more steam machine that we add to our steam workshop. And thus we can seal the components inside the tubes with the help of a steel ring in our vacuum machine. Next we make a bunch of circuit boards. The last component we need is resistors, which do require paper. To make that, we extract plant fiber from wood pulp and then roll it with a rolling pin. And thus we have the resistors. Now we can assemble all the parts and finally have LV circuits. The first thing we are going to do with them is a power generator, such as a steam turbine. However, to have a more comfortable workshop, we also want to make an energy buffer before placing down the machinery. And some batteries. So we make some sulfuric acid using the byproduct of pyrite processing. But that will only give us sulfur trioxide. To make acid, we have to mix with water in our mixer. Now that we have the sulfuric acid, we only have to make a bunch of anodes and cathodes and we can finally complete our batteries. And, of course, we need a battery buffer to use them. We are using a 4-slot one so that we won't have to make cables too thick. If you want to see how these things work, make sure to check the next episode. Bye bye.